The Life of Eijiro Kirishima, My Hero Academia. Eijiro Kirishima, also known as the sturdy hero Red Riot, is a student in Class 1A at UA High School training to become a pro hero. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Eijiro Kirishima. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Background. When he was 3 years old, Eijiro woke up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. When he rubbed his eye, his hardening quirk manifested for the first time. This made his hand harden and caused Eijiro to cut himself, which left a scar on his right eye. Afterwards, the young Eijiro initially hated his quirk for hurting him. Despite this, Eijiro began to admire the hero Crimson Riot, whose quirk was very similar to his. This admiration caused Eijiro to adopt Crimson Riot's ideology and mentality that, as long as he has a manly spirit, then quirks don't even matter. All that's needed is to train hard to cover for the quirk with the spirit. Eijiro followed those tips and trained for years to strengthen himself. Eijiro and Mina Ashido attended Mustafa Private Middle School during junior high, and although they weren't close, Mina's outgoing nature and strong personality made Eijiro self-conscious of his own appearance and personality. This was worsened during an incident where Eijiro, dominated by fear, found himself unable to stand against a giant figure who was threatening fellow students of his school, who were saved by Mina when she managed to deceive the terrifying person by giving him false directions. This incident left Eijiro feeling wholly incapable of being a hero, primarily due to his hesitation in risking his life to save others. Afterward, while in his room, Eijiro felt disappointed with himself for being a coward and gave up on his dream of going to UA High School, and was prepared to stop being chivalrous due to his true colors. Angry at himself, Eijiro threw a book at his bookshelf, accidentally activating an old holographic projector depicting an interview with Crimson Riot, in which the hero reveals that, despite his reckless hero image, he does feel fear when putting his life on the line, and condones anyone who doesn't. He fears danger, but he feared the dying look on someone's face far more. He believes in living a life with no regrets. The words of Eijiro's idol, which had inspired him before, again inspired him further to keep following his dream of attending UA High School. Eijiro committed to training himself and studying hard in order to pass the UA entrance exam, and he succeeded. The morning before classes started at UA, Eijiro met up with Mina again. Sporting a new hairstyle, Eijiro claimed to have left his insecurities behind, but Mina playfully told Eijiro not to pressure himself too much and to let the change just happen naturally once Eijiro became truly confident about himself. Entrance Exam Arc. Eijiro participates in the UA entrance exams, and his efforts allow him to place second overall. Quirk Apprehension Test Arc. Eijiro Kirishima is first introduced when Izuku Midoriya arrives on the first day of class. He's sitting at his desk alongside the other Class 1A students. Shortly afterwards, the class makes their way to the PE grounds, where their teacher Shota Aizawa informs them that they must undertake a Quirk Apprehension test. Eijiro is shocked by his teacher's announcement that the student who places last would be expelled. However, once everyone completes the test, Aizawa states that no one will be expelled, revealing that it was all a rational deception to make sure everyone gave it their all. Battle Trial Arc. The next day at school, All Might teaches Class 1A's Basic Hero Training class and announces that the class will participate in battle trials. Eijiro is excited by the idea of combat training and changes into his hero costume with the rest of his class. Eijiro is partnered with Hantasero on Team J after being randomly paired. While observing the battle between Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya, Eijiro says Katsuki is unmanly for trying to ambush Izuku. He also questions what they're saying during the battle, as there's no sound through the surveillance footage. After witnessing Katsuki's large attack on Izuku, Eijiro becomes increasingly concerned about Izuku's safety. Watching the match between Shoto Todoroki versus Mashira Ojiro and Toru Hagakure, Eijiro and All Might begin to shiver when Shoto uses his quirk. Later on, after the battle trials, when Izuku returns to class, Eijiro, along with his other classmates, surround him, praising his performance during the battle trial, and introduce themselves. U.S.J. Arc. During their next homeroom class, Aizawa announces Class 1A must choose a class president. Eijiro and his classmates are excited by the idea of representing their class. After voting, Izuku Midoriya is elected, and Eijiro openly supports him. Later on, the school's sirens go off at lunch, and students evacuate in a panic, creating a large traffic jam. Eijiro is caught in the mob, but the situation is diffused by Tenya Ida, who reveals it was a false alarm caused by the media trespassing on school grounds. Afterward, Izuku resigns as class president and nominates Tenya in his place. Eijiro supports the decision because he saw that Tenya manned up and took charge of the previous situation. Aizawa interrupts and instructs the class to suit up and prepare to head out for rescue training. While on the bus traveling to an outside facility, Eijiro speaks with his classmates regarding quirks and their relation to Pro Hero's popularity. He says that he wishes for a flashier quirk, believing it would garner him more fame. Izuku argues that Eijiro's quirk is strong enough for him to become a popular pro, but Eijiro restates his point by using Shoto and Katsuki as examples of quirks perfect for professional heroes. The class eventually arrives at the unforeseen simulation joint, greeted by 13. However, they're interrupted by the arrival of the League of Villains, led by Tomura Shigaraki. As the villains keep showing one after another, Eijiro is seen evacuating with his class, but they end up coming across Kurogiri, who blocks their way. Eijiro, together with Katsuki, attempt to attack the villain, but are unsuccessful due to Kurogiri's amorphous body. The villain then uses his quirk and warps Eijiro, along with Katsuki, to the ruin zone of the U.S.J. In the ruin zone, Eijiro and Katsuki are ambushed by a group of villains, but they're both able to hold their own and easily defeat them. Eijiro says that they should go and save the others, worrying about his classmates that don't have battle-effective quirks. Katsuki, however, decides to go and fight Kurogiri instead, much to Eijiro's surprise. After hearing Katsuki's reasoning to go after Kurogiri, Eijiro notices Katsuki's calm attitude, much to Katsuki's chagrin. So Eijiro decides to go with Katsuki. Eijiro and Katsuki eventually reach the central plaza, where they attack Tomura and Kurogiri respectively. Eijiro attempts to punch Tomura, but the latter evades him. Eijiro expresses his desire to support All Might, but the hero refuses and tells them to escape instead. Tomura attempts to attack Eijiro and the others, but All Might's fight with Nomu prevents him from getting close. Eijiro and the others watch in awe of All Might's strength as the #1 hero defeats the Nomu. Eijiro withdraws himself from the rest of the fight, but witnesses Izuku rushing to All Might's side. Izuku and All Might are both saved when Tenya returns to the U.S.J. with pro heroes as reinforcements. After the remaining villains are defeated, Eijiro rushes to check on Izuku's condition. Cementos arrives and blocks Eijiro's way before he discovers All Might's weak form. He instructs Eijiro to regroup with his class, so he follows the hero's instructions and joins his class outside the facility before returning to school. UA Sports Festival Arc. 2 days after the attack on U.S.J., Eijiro and his classmates return to school and talk about the attack. After Aizawa returns to class, Eijiro and his peers are lectured about the importance of the upcoming UA Sports Festival. Eijiro is more than excited to participate despite some of his classmates' concerns over holding a festival so soon after the attack. Eijiro is freaked out when Ochako gets overly excited and demands the class chant that they will do their best. At the end of the day, Class 1A's exit gets blocked by a crowd of students from other classes. Katsuki confronts and insults the crowd, making enemies out of everyone else before leaving. Eijiro tries to get Katsuki to defend the class, but he replies that the crowd of students are irrelevant, and it's only important that he defeats them. Eijiro is moved by Katsuki's manly exit. For the next 2 weeks before the festival, Eijiro trains at the Replica City District. When the day of the UA Sports Festival arrives, Eijiro changes into his PE clothes and prepares with his class in their designated waiting room. Like the rest of his peers, Eijiro takes notice when Shoto Todoroki challenges Izuku Midoriya. He tries to defuse the situation, but Shoto refuses and replies that the festival isn't a team effort. Before the festival begins, first-year chief referee Midnight calls Katsuki to the stage to lead the pledge. Instead, he simply announces that he'll win the games, angering his fellow competitors, and generates boos from the crowd. Eijiro and his classmates aren't really surprised. They expected Katsuki to say something like that. Midnight announces the preliminaries will be an obstacle race 4 kilometers around the stadium, which immediately begins after the rules are explained. Shoto gets out to an early lead by freezing the stadium's exit, but Eijiro avoids the ice by jumping through the exit. Next, everyone reaches the first obstacle, a blockade of villain bots from the entrance exam, including several giant 0-point villains. Shoto freezes one of the giant robots solid while it's off balance, causing it to fall on Eijiro and Tetsutetsu from Class 1B. Eijiro survives by using his hardening quirk and damns Shoto for endangering others like that. He believes only he could have survived, but is shocked when Tetsutetsu uses his steel quirk to break free from underneath the robot as well. Eijiro is discouraged when he notices Tetsutetsu's quirk is similar to his own, fearing he won't be able to stand out now. Eijiro finishes the obstacle race in 9th place, qualifying him for the second event, the Cavalry Battle. After Midnight explains the rules, everyone forms their teams for the Cavalry Battle. After failing to team up with Shoto, Eijiro asks Katsuki to form a team. Katsuki forgets Eijiro's name and greets him by dumb hair. Eijiro takes offense to this, but points out that their hairstyles are similar. Eijiro understands that Katsuki will need a strong front horse for the cavalry battle, and his quirk would be perfect for resisting Katsuki's explosions. Katsuki replies that he needs someone with guts, and Eijiro convinces him to form a team by promising to go after Izuku Midoriya's team together. Hanta Sero and Mina Ashido join them. The cavalry battle begins, and like many of the other teams, Team Bakugo goes after Team Midoriya's 10 million points. Katsuki tries to attack them in the air but is blocked by Fumikage Tokuyami's Dark Shadow Quirk. Fellow member of Team Bakugo, Hanta Sero, catches Bakugo, garnering Eijiro praise. Soon after, Team Bakugo's points are stolen by Team Monoma. Nato Monoma from Class 1B taunts Katsuki, enraging him. An angry Katsuki tells Eijiro that their plans have changed. Before they go after Team Midoriya, they must destroy Class 1B. Nato evades Katsuki's first attack and then blasts him with an explosion. Surprised, Eijiro comments that it's weird Nato's using Katsuki's quirk. Then Nato quickly taps Eijiro's forehead before blocking Katsuki's next attack. When the smoke clears, Eijiro is shocked to see Nato's using his hardening power to defend himself. Katsuki figures out Nato's quirk is the ability to copy other people's quirks. Katsuki tries to attack again, but Eijiro is immobilized by Kojiro Bondo's quirk, and Nato flees. The next time Team Bakugo is able to get close, Katsuki flies off and attacks on his own. Although Eijiro warns him not to fly off on his own, Katsuki is able to steal enough points to move his team to second place. Eijiro is satisfied, but his team leader is anything but. Katsuki demands that they take the rest of Team Monoma's points before going after Izuku's team. Using Hanta and Mina's quirks strategically, Team Bakugo charges at Nato and Katsuki takes back their original headband. They go after the 10 million points, which is now in the possession of Team Todoroki, but time runs out just as they arrive on the scene. Hanta's happy with second place, but Eijiro notes that Katsuki's not satisfied at all, as they all watch him scream in anger. Because, of course, he's a sore loser. Midnight announces the finals will be a one-on-one fighting tournament, and everyone draws lots to see who they'll face in the first bracket. Eijiro expresses his excitement to participate in the finals he's watched every year growing up. He matches up with Tetsu, much to his irritation. Because they have basically the same type of quirk, and he can't stand out to sponsors now. Eijiro duels Tetsu in the 7th match of the first round. They receive similar intros from Present Mic, further annoying Eijiro. He and Tetsu fist fight using their hardened bodies, trading blows back and forth until they eventually knock each other out. Midnight rules that after they both recover, a victor will be decided via an arm wrestling contest. Once the last match of the first round ends, the arm wrestling match commences. They both use their quirks to try and gain an advantage, but Tetsu's iron gives way and Eijiro pins his arm down to win and move on to the next round. Eijiro offers his hand to Tetsu, congratulating him on a match well fought. Tetsu shakes Eijiro's hand and thanks him for the compliment. Eijiro returns to his class just after the start of Izuku and Shoto's battle. He's upset at himself for arriving late, but Denki congratulates him on his victory. Eijiro thanks him and comments that Katsuki's next, to which Katsuki replies that he'll kill Eijiro. Eijiro laughs him off and responds by sarcastically complimenting Katsuki for having moves that blast the whole stadium. Katsuki tells Eijiro and Denki that quirks are physical abilities and they all have their limits. In the last match of the second bracket, Eijiro faces off with Katsuki. Eijiro cuts Katsuki's cheek near the start of the bout and takes an explosion straight to the hip. Eijiro is unfazed thanks to his quirk's defensive ability. He taunts Katsuki, telling Explosion Boy that his blast won't work, and goes on the offensive by trying to deliver a series of punches. Katsuki evades the strikes and is eventually able to injure Eijiro with another direct hit to his torso. Katsuki figures out that Eijiro's hardening ability weakens with every hit, and that he's been overusing it to keep his entire body hard throughout the fight. Katsuki capitalizes and unleashes a flurry of explosions until Eijiro is ultimately overwhelmed and knocked unconscious. Eijiro is treated for his injuries and returns to the stands in time for Katsuki's next round fight against Fumikage Tokuyami. Fumikage ultimately surrenders and Eijiro surmises that his quirk is weak against light, and Katsuki was the perfect person to exploit that. Along with his class, Eijiro watches the closing ceremony of the UA Sports Festival. He comments that Katsuki's been in a fury ever since he woke up after being knocked out at the end of the finals. Which he doesn't know is because Todoroki decided not to go full out. Versus Hero Killer Arc. Eijiro returns to class 2 days after the sports festival, and Eijiro fears the topic may be on hero laws. He's excited to learn that the class will choose their hero names for the upcoming internships. Aizawa reveals the draft results following the festival, and Eijiro has received 68 offers from pro heroes. Midnight joins the class to help them select hero names for their upcoming internships. Eijiro chooses the moniker Sturdy Hero Red Riot. Midnight questions whether his name is a nod to an old school hero Crimson Riot, which Eijiro confirms. Eijiro replies that although he's old school, Crimson Riot is an idol and he wishes to be just like him. Midnight advises him to live up to the name and Eijiro tells her that he will. When Katsuki comes up with the hero name King Explosion Murder, which gets rejected by Midnight, Eijiro jokingly suggests that he use Explosion Boy, much to Katsuki's anger. After Class 1A's finished formulating their hero names, Eijiro's given his list of offers so he can choose a hero agency to intern at. He wishes to fight crime in a big city, and elects to choose Fourth Kind Agency. When the first day of internships arrives, Eijiro receives his costume and boards a train to Fourth Kind's agency. Eijiro meets Tetsu at the Fourth Kind's office, surprised to see his newfound friend there. Fourth Kind explains that his office was able to extend 2 offers because he was impressed with the 2 young men's spirits during their fight. The chivalrous hero teaches them about hero wages from the government. The next day, Eijiro and Tetsu make lukewarm tea and are then punished by Fourth Kind. He punches both of them with their quirks active and says it's satisfying to hit their hardened bodies, hiding the fact that he's in pain. The workplace training comes to an end and Eijiro returns to UA. In Class 1A, Eijiro and Hanta laugh at Katsuki's new hairstyle, causing Katsuki to retaliate in anger. Funny enough, that was my hairstyle, and kinda is, still right now, but whatever. Later on, he and the class witness the field training race, with Eijiro voicing Hanta will win after Hanta leads in it. However, Eijiro is surprised when Izuku suddenly passes Hanta up. He's amazed at the latter's new moves. After hero agency internships are finished, Eijiro is in the boys' locker room changing into his school uniform. He states that he needs to focus on his maneuverability. Yo, this guy does not stop thinking about his future, man. Final exams arc. 1 week before final exams, Aizawa reminds Class 1A to study for both the written and practical exams before ending class. Many of the students opt to study with Momo, and Eijiro mentions how he should tag along. Irritated, Katsuki says he'll beat the material into Eijiro's head himself, and Eijiro responds that he'll be counting on it. When Katsuki scolds everyone for their excitement and storms out of class later on, Eijiro mentions it's been a while since Katsuki's been that intense. Funny enough, I think Eijiro is the only one that knows how to handle Katsuki. Anyway, a week passes and Class 1A finishes the written section of the finals. They change into their hero costumes and join their teachers at the practical exam area. There, Principal Nezu announces the practical portion will involve pairs of students facing off against one teacher. Eijiro and Rikido are paired against Cementos in their first bout. Eijiro and Rikido agree to attack Cementos from the front because he's slow, but their opponent creates multiple cement walls to block them. The both of them use their quirks to smash through the cement blocks, but Cementos continues to make more. Before long, the duo's quirks run out of steam and Cementos defeats them using a cement attack, and as a result, they fail the practical. Eijiro and Rikido mull over their defeat as the remaining matches are underway. Following the conclusion of final exams, Class 1A returns to their homeroom. Eijiro, Rikido, Denki, and Mina are all crestfallen that they're unable to go to training camp because they failed the practical. Izuku tries to cheer up those who failed, but Denki launches a comical tirade at Izuku. Soon after, Aizawa enters the classroom and informs Class 1A that all of them are going to the training camp. Eijiro and the others are happily shocked to hear this, but they, along with Hanta, will all receive harsh extra studies for failing. Class 1A decides to go to the Kiyashi Ward shopping mall to buy necessities for the Forest Lodge. Eijiro asks Katsuki to tag along, but he refuses. At the shopping mall, Eijiro sees that everyone has different needs and suggests splitting up and meeting up later. Yo, Katsuki is the biggest tsundere. Forest Training Camp Arc. A day prior to summer break, Izuku invites the boys from Class 1A to the pool for endurance training. Eijiro arrives late with Katsuki in tow. They hold competitive swimming races and Eijiro loses his leg to Katsuki. Just before Shoto, Izuku, and Katsuki compete in the final race, Aizawa arrives and tells them they're out of time to use the pool and kicks them out. Summer break begins and Class 1A rides a bus to a forest reserve belonging to the hero team, the Wild Wild Pussycats. Pixie Bob and Mandalay introduce themselves and challenge the students to reach base camp past the forest in 3 hours. When most of Eijiro's peers refuse, he and his class are forcibly thrown into Beast's forest by Pixie Bob's quirk. Monsters made from dirt clods attack the students. Class 1A works together to fight their way through Beast's forest. They encounter several different dirt monsters. Eijiro and Rikido use their enhanced strength to destroy one of the monsters after Hanta slams it into the ground with his tape. Class 1A doesn't make it through the forest for several more hours. Well over their time limit, Class 1A arrives at the base camp exhausted and battered. Mandalay reveals the time limit was the expectancy for actual heroes, not the students. The Pussycats serve the students dinner. Eijiro and Denki scarf down their food while complimenting how good it is. Eijiro gets a whiff of meat in a clay pot and erratically asks Pixie Bob about it while his mouth is full. Because of course, I would do the same thing. She replies that the boys are so hungry that they're acting strangely. Eijiro and the boys bathe in the hot springs afterward, and Mineta tries to get a peek. Intense Quirk training begins the next day. Eijiro trains his Quirk by fighting one-on-one with Mashirao's tail. Afterward, Class 1A and 1B are tasked with cooking for themselves. They successfully make curry for everyone. Eijiro says it doesn't taste great, but he's so hungry that it doesn't even matter. Eijiro and the other students who failed their practicals take extra lessons with Aizawa until 2 in the morning. Training starts back up at 7 the next day. Eijiro, Mina, Denki, Rikido, and Hanta are all super tired, but Aizawa forces them to train anyway. The Pussycats offer the students a test of courage activity following training. Aizawa, however, forces the extra lessons group to sit out for more teaching, much to their displeasure. The Vanguard Action Squad of the League of Villains invade that night. Mandalay sends out a telepathic message warning the students of their arrival. Shortly after Aizawa leaves, Mandalay sends out 2 more messages giving permission for students to fight back and informing everyone that Katsuki is one of the villains' targets. Frustrated with his inability to save Katsuki, Eijiro pleads with Vlad King to let him fight. The hero refuses until they're interrupted by a sudden attack from Dabi. Life of Dabi video coming soon. Dabi blasts the classroom door open with a fire attack before being quickly subdued by Vlad King. Dabi taunts Vlad King and the students, saying that they've already failed. Aizawa returns to the class and destroys what turns out to be just a clone of Dabi. Eijiro and Tenya plead for Aizawa to allow them to fight, but he refuses as well. The villains successfully kidnap Katsuki and the students return home from camp. 2 days later, Eijiro visits Izuku in the hospital along with many of his peers. Eijiro tells Izuku that they can still save Katsuki. The day before, Eijiro and Shoto overheard Momo tell All Might about a tracking device she placed on Nomu. Tenya deduces that Eijiro wants Momo to create another receiver so that Eijiro and company can track down and rescue Katsuki themselves. He demands that the rescue of Katsuki be left to the pro heroes, but Eijiro's tired of being unable to do anything. This leads to a heated argument between the two. After being calmed by Denki and Tsuyu, Eijiro admits he's fully aware that the matter should be dealt by professionals. Even so, Eijiro encourages Izuku to go through with the plan because they can still save their friend. Most of Class 1A are against the plan. After the doctor requests the class to leave, Eijiro tells Izuku that he and Shoto will be waiting outside the hospital tonight for him and Momo so that they can go and rescue Katsuki. Hideout Raid Arc. Later that night, Eijiro and Shoto wait for Izuku and Momo. They arrive, but before Momo can speak, Tenya appears, angry that they're about to repeat the same mistake he made at Hosu. Shoto tells Enya that he will not engage the villains in combat, and Eijiro explains that they're planning a covert mission. Momo states that she came along to accompany them all in order to prevent them from engaging in combat. Tenya decides to go with them. Eijiro, along with Izuku, Momo, Tenya, and Shoto board a train to travel to a place called Kamino, Yokohama, located in the Kanagawa Prefecture. At the location, the group puts on disguises to prevent the League of Villains from recognizing them. They exit the clothing shop and witness a video clip of UA's public apology for the danger. Eijiro, along with Shoto, Izuku, Momo, and Tenya, continue towards the place that Momo's tracking device is detecting. After waiting for a while near the place, Momo, Tenya, Shoto, Eijiro, and Izuku prepare to infiltrate the supposed League of Villains hideout. Eijiro, along with the group, go to the back of the hideout and see a window. Shoto and Tenya have Izuku and Eijiro stand on their shoulders to see what's inside using the night vision goggles Eijiro brought along. Suddenly, Mount Lady destroys the front of the warehouse, which shocks Eijiro. Seeing that the pro heroes are at the warehouse, Eijiro and the group assume that All Might is with Katsuki as they're speaking. Eijiro and the group decide to head home. Suddenly, the entire warehouse is completely destroyed by a mysterious man, along with the surrounding area being significantly damaged. The man's aura above them utterly terrifies Eijiro, Izuku, Shoto, Tenya, and Momo, with all of them unable to move from their spot. As the conflict continues, Eijiro watches the man battle All Might and sees there are no openings to rescue Katsuki, due to All for One's presence and Katsuki being outnumbered by the Vanguard Action Squad. Suddenly, Izuku comes up with an idea and explains the plan to Eijiro and the rest of the group. He tells Eijiro that the plan will depend on him, since he's the only one whose help Katsuki won't be ashamed to accept from. Which is, the truest bromance, by the way. Izuku puts his plan into action. Izuku and Tenya hold on to Eijiro, with Izuku using One for All full cowl and Tenya using his Recipro burst to burst through the wall, while Eijiro using his hardening to protect himself, Izuku, and Tenya. After Izuku, Tenya, and Eijiro burst through the wall, Shoto creates an ice ramp. Izuku, Tenya, and Eijiro jump off Shoto's ice ramp and head into the sky. All for One sees the trio and attempts to attack them, but All Might intervenes by punching him. Katsuki sees the trio while Eijiro yells at Katsuki to take his hand. Tomura tries to take Katsuki, but Katsuki uses his explosion to launch himself towards Izuku, Tenya, and Eijiro. Katsuki grabs Eijiro's hand and smiles. Yo, when Katsuki launched, he looked so funny because his body didn't move, only his hands and feet. It just looks so weird. Seeing that Izuku, Eijiro, and Tenya have succeeded in rescuing Katsuki, Shoto and Momo begin escaping from the battlefield. Shoto and Momo successfully escape the battlefield. Shoto phones Izuku and finds out that him and his group are at the train station. Eijiro and Katsuki converse, with Katsuki adamantly saying that he was never saved and only escaped with them so that All Might could fight without holding back, while Eijiro's happy that Katsuki's safe. The group stays with a large group of people, watching the fight between All Might and All For One on a giant screen. Everyone watching the battle begins to worry about All Might's chances of victory. Desperate, citizens cheer for All Might, and Eijiro screams for All Might to win. All Might ends up winning, although at a great cost. Shoto and Momo then meet up with Izuku, Eijiro, Tenya, and Katsuki. They take Katsuki to a police station for his safety. Afterwards, Eijiro parts ways and goes home. Provisional Hero License Exam Arc. Following the intense villain attack towards UA students, Nezu transformed UA into a boarding school in order to protect the students. The Height Alliance was built in just 3 days. It's meant to protect the students and allows the teachers to keep close surveillance on the students. Aizawa meets with his students outside of the building. He states that they must start preparing to get provisional hero licenses like they had planned to during the training camp. Then Aizawa expresses his disappointment that some of them tried to act like they had their licenses. Aizawa calls out Eijiro, Izuku, Shoto, Momo, and Tenya. He tells them that he knows they were present at the site of Katsuki Bakugo's rescue and took it upon themselves to rescue him. He also knows that the rest of Class 1A, except Katsuki, Toru Hagakure, and Kyokajiro, also knew about their plan to rescue Katsuki. Aizawa explains that their actions have been covered up, but tells them that if All Might didn't retire, with the exception of Katsuki, Toru, and Kyoka, he would have expelled them all as punishment. Aizawa advises the group that went to save Katsuki to go through the proper procedures next time, which will also restore the trust between them. The atmosphere of Class 1A has become gloomy. Katsuki sees the gloomy atmosphere and grabs Denki and forces him to use his electrification to get him into his dump state to distract the class. He then pays Eijiro back for using his allowance on night vision goggles. Eijiro promises to make it up to the class by buying them dinner later that night. Class 1A arranges their luggage in their respective bedrooms. Later that night, the boys of Class 1A are in the common space on the first floor. The girls of Class 1A show up, and Mina Ashido suggests a room showcasing competition. When they check out Eijiro's room, they see it's full of manly elements. None of the girls, except Ochako, appreciates Kirishima's room. After the competition, at Ochako's urgings, Eijiro, along with Izuku, Shoto, Tenya, and Momo, all meet outside the dorm where they find her with Tsuyu. Tsuyu apologizes for harshly doubting their plan to save Katsuki, and they apologize for worrying her, and they mend their friendship. Eijiro and the rest of Class 1A are charged with coming up with new special moves and are given a special class to develop their quirks and come up with them. During the class, All Might shows up and advises Eijiro to focus being less artful and more on utilizing brute force with a technique he should develop. Eijiro also updates his hero costume and adds sleeves to it to protect civilians he's rescuing from being hurt by his quirk. The day of the licensing exam arrives and Class 1A travels to the National Dagobah Arena. The first phase begins and Izuku suggests that Class 1A stick together, but Katsuki refuses and goes off on his own. Eijiro and Denki follow Katsuki to a street-side area of the arena. Katsuki yells at them both to stop talking, and Eijiro replies telling Katsuki to relax. A mound of flesh is thrown at Katsuki, and Eijiro throws himself in the way to save his friend. The flesh attack transforms Eijiro into a meatball that lands in Seiji Shishikura's hand. Later, Katsuki would also be transformed into a meatball, but both are saved by Denki, who manages to injure Seiji, and he loses his hold on the meatballs. Katsuki and Eijiro return to normal and both deliver the finishing blow. Katsuki, Denki, and Eijiro manage to eliminate 2 people each and pass the first exam. The second phase of the exam begins and Katsuki rushes off on his own again. Once again, Eijiro and Denki follow him through the arena. Katsuki refuses to help other people that Denki and Eijiro decide to rescue, being very rude to them. The exam ends after Denki and Eijiro save the last 2 people from HUC. Everyone meets to look over a presentation board, revealing who passed the exam. Eijiro sees that he's managed to pass the exam and get his license, but he's surprised to see that Katsuki didn't. Katsuki is livid to find out that he failed the exam. Shie Hassaikai Arc. The next day, Class 1A learn about Izuku and Katsuki's fight, as Izuku and Katsuki clean the dormitory, being punished to clean the bedroom for several days. The rest of the class leaves to attend a speech. While on their way, they meet Class 1B. and Nato criticizes Class 1A for having 2 of their classmates fail. Eijiro wonders if any of Class 1B failed, to which Nato reveals that none of them failed. Shoto apologizes for letting Class 1A down, but Eijiro tells Shoto not to let it bother him. After the speech, Aizawa tells Class 1A about the Hero work studies, Heroes activities done off campus, saying that it's a more formalized version of the field training they did with pro heroes before. 3 days later, Aizawa introduces Class 1A to the people who will teach them about Hero work studies, the third-year students who rank among the top of all of UA. Students known as the Big Three: Mirio Togata, Tamaki Amagi, and Nejire Hado. The personalities of the 3 students leave Class 1A confused, and they get even more confused when Mirio Togata challenges them to a fight. At Gym Gamma, Eijiro notes that they have the advantage, and Eijiro asks Mirio if he sees them as nothing but small fry, to which Mirio replies, he does. Mirio tells Class 1A to attack him whenever, wherever they want, and asks who wants to go first. Izuku and Eijiro decide to go first. Surprised at Izuku's determination, Eijiro lets Izuku go first. So Izuku attacks and kicks at Mirio's head, but his foot phases clean through Mirio's head, and the former confirms Mirio's quirk allows him to pass through things. Using his permeation quirk, Mirio easily defeats more than half of the entire Class 1A. The other half tries to counterattack, Deku having discerned the functioning of his quirk, but still Mirio also defeats them with hardly any problem. As Class 1A recovers, Mirio states that the reason he wanted to fight Class 1A is to show the experience he gained from the work studies. Mirio is able to transform his quirk and reach the top. Class 1A starts seeing that hero work studies are different from the field training they went through. Following Mirio's advice, he phones Fourth Kind to ask for a work studies, but he replies that he doesn't even take anyone for work studies. At Heights Alliance, Eijiro congratulates Izuku for being accepted into the Night Eye Agency, but rumbles for not being able to do the same. Aizawa arrives to inform him, Ochako, Tsuyu, and Fumikage that there are people interested in them. In the case of Eijiro, he's notified that Tamaki wants to talk to him, and Aizawa recommends Eijiro to talk to him tomorrow. Eijiro wonders what they want to talk about, and is unable to wait until tomorrow, so he goes to the third year's room to ask him. It turns out that Tamaki wanted to invite him to participate in the work studies along with him in Fat Gum's agency in Osaka, which Eijiro accepted without hesitation. Once there, the BMI hero Fat Gum is surprised that Tamaki's brought anyone really, and remembers that Eijiro was one of the best participants at the sports festival. He says that spunky kids like him are welcome in his agency. Eijiro says that Fourth Kind hired him for the same reasons, which is because energetic boys are good for raising morale at the agencies, but Eijiro confesses that he doesn't want to be just that. He wants to be a hero at the front lines and save people's lives like Crimson Riot, never wanting to be again a pathetic guy who abandons people in danger. After the presentation, Eijiro officially begins his work studies. Eijiro, Tamaki, and Fat Gum are patrolling the streets in the Esoha market. Suddenly, a fight breaks out. A thug's attacking another group of thugs for doing business on his turf. The group of thugs manages to get away, only for them to land into Fat Gum and start submerging into his body. However, one of them manages to escape but is caught by Tamaki's quirk. Tamaki wonders if he did a good job, to which Eijiro replies that he was awesome. However, another criminal watching from the crowd shoots Tamaki with a mysterious bullet. He fires off a second shot, but Red Riot deflects it off his own head, using his hardened skin. Fired up, Red Riot hardens his whole body and leaps into action. Tamaki tries to use his quirk again, but for some reason he can't activate it, and Fat Gum's surprised to learn the villains have a quirk eraser. Meanwhile, Eijiro chases the villain to a dead end. The villain uses his quirk to create blades on his body, but Kirishima knocks the man down. In this situation, the villain injects himself with a quirk booster that allows him to generate more blades as he unleashes a flurry of blades that consume the entire alleyway. Red Riot tells all the bystanders to retreat. Even with his hardening quirk, the blades break through his skin, sending Eijiro flying back. The villain arrogantly claims he'll be able to save his friends and sends multiple swords at Eijiro. Red Riot knows he has to protect everyone who hasn't gotten away yet. Remembering an advice Katsuki gave him, Eijiro hardens his body even further, revealing his new super move, Red Riot Unbreakable. Thanks to this, Eijiro breaks through his attacker's assault, breaking the many swords apart, and defeats him. The defeated man tries to escape, but Fat Gum intercepts him and traps the villain inside his stomach. Fat Gum reminds Red Riot to always subdue a villain as quickly as possible and to never fall for their schemes. Eijiro thanks Fat Gum for saving the day. The civilians thank Red Riot for saving them, and they recognize he put himself in the way of the attacks to protect them. Fat Gum commends Red Riot for an epic debut, and the bystanders say he will become a great hero one day. Fat Gum tells his sidekicks that Trigger is banned in Japan. Eijiro compliments Fat Gum for knowing his stuff, and Sun Eater hides his face in his hood, embarrassed he couldn't be useful. but Eijiro tries to encourage him. Meanwhile, Fat Gum is worried about the existence of drugs that disable people's quirks. The next day at UA in Class 1A, Denki comments that Eijiro's hero name Red Riot is on the internet, and his hero debut, where he defeated the thugs and saved civilians, is also on the internet. A few days later, Eijiro, alongside Izuku, Ochako, Tsuyu, and the Big Three, are heading out at Sir Night-Eye's office and see that many heroes are gathered. Fat Gum, Eijiro and Tamaki's internship mentor, and Ryukyu, Ochako, Tsuyu, and Nejide's internship mentor. Surprisingly, Aizawa and Gran Torino have also gathered. Thanks to the information all the heroes provided him with, Sir Night-Eye was able to make substantial progress with his investigation of an organization named Shie Hassaikai. This captures Eijiro, Izuku, Ochako, and Tsuyu's attention, after Sir Night-Eye and his sidekicks explain the situation regarding the organization and its relationship with drug trafficking. Fat Gum intervenes, explaining that he, Eijiro, and Tamaki were involved the other day in a battle against a thug in which Tamaki was shot with a bullet that contains a drug that can damage the quirk factor, which allows a person to use his quirk. Fat Gum follows up by explaining that thanks to Eijiro's brave actions by protecting Tamaki, they were able to obtain a bullet with the contents still inside. Fat Gum explains that after examining the contents of the bullet, they discovered that inside the bullet were human blood and cells, which disturbs everyone. Sir Night-Eye states that Chisaki's quirk and the quirk-destroying bullet are related. He explains that Chisaki has a daughter that had no birth certificate, and details about her are unknown. She says that Izuku and Mirio encountered her on their patrol, and she had a number of bandages on her. Gran Torino comments that since they live in a superhuman society, anyone can do anything if they put their mind to it. Eijiro asks what Gran Torino means, and Sir Night-Eye explains that Chisaki is probably using his daughter to make those quirk-destroying bullets, which disgusts the group. Izuku and Mirio stand up and declare that this time, they'll definitely rescue Eri. Sir Night-Eye states that their objective will be to save Chisaki's daughter. With the meeting over, Izuku and Mirio explain to their classmates what occurred between them and Chisaki. Izuku and Mirio are still crestfallen for being unable to save Eri when she was right in their hands. Aizawa spots his Class 1A students and talks to them about originally suspending their work studies since the League of Villains are involved. Before they start protesting, Aizawa gives them permission to take part in Eri's rescue operation and signifies his decision by fist-bumping Izuku's chest. While Eri's location is being pinpointed, Izuku, Ochako, Tsuyu, and Eijiro remain on standby while continuing their training. However, they're forbidden from disclosing any information regarding the operation. Every one of them, including the Big Three, wait impatiently for any calls that inform them that they've finally found her. 2 days later, late at night, all of them receive messages from Sir Night-Eye informing them that they finally know where Eri is, and calls everyone to another conference to prepare for the impending rescue mission. The next morning at 8 a.m., in front of the police station, heroes partaking in the rescue operation have been given detailed information about the Shie Hasaikai's secret complex underground facility, as well as all of the information available of the quirks registered of the Shie Hassaikai members. Eijiro is eager to start the operation and displays his eagerness towards Izuku. At 8:30 a.m., the heroes and police force are outside the Shie Hasaikai's headquarters and commence the operation. Sir Night-Eye and Fat Gum's groups have charged into the headquarters and head down towards the basement, but are surprised to see a wall that impedes their path through the underground maze. Mirio uses his quirk to slip through the wall and confirms it was a hastily created blockade made by Overhaul's quirk. Izuku and Eijiro use their quirks to break down the wall, and as they go through the operation, several comrades are left behind to face the threats, like Ryukyu's team against Rikiya Katsukame, or Tamaki against 3 of the 8 bullets. In the underground labyrinth, Aizawa is attacked by a piece of the manipulated wall, courtesy of Mimic, but Fat Gum shoves Aizawa out of the way and is thrown into another room. As Fat Gum gets up, he's surprised to see that Eijiro's with him. Eijiro tells Fat Gum that he was also trying to protect Aizawa, but once he did, he was swallowed by Fat Gum's quirk. Suddenly, 2 of the 8 bullets, Kendo Rappa and Hekeji Tengai, appear. Eijiro activates his Red Riot Unbreakable. Rappa launches rapid bullet-like punches at great speed, striking Fat Gum and Eijiro. Fat Gum was able to mitigate the damage thanks to his quirk, but Eijiro, although his super move also mitigates the impacts, sees that his arms are bleeding and becomes shocked that Rappa's punches manages to break through Red Riot Unbreakable's defenses. Fat Gum counters with a punch of his own, but is surprised that his punch strikes a barrier instead. The fight continues, and Rappa launches an assault on Fat Gum with his multiple fast punches, while Eijiro watches in disgrace as he's unable to do anything. Disheartened, Eijiro believes there's nothing he can do to help. Tengai sees Eijiro's fear and notes that the look in his eyes confirms he has accepted defeat. However, after he recalls the words of Crimson Riot in the hologram many years ago, Eijiro appears in front of Rappa. Eijiro is struck by Rappa's fierce punches and manages to withstand it, which takes Rappa by surprise. As he falls to the ground, a bloody and beaten Eijiro states that his intervention was not meaningless, as it's given Fatgum the time needed to release his accumulated strength. Fatgum, who is now shrunken and skinny, yet muscular, reprimands Tengai for calling Eijiro's intervention meaningless. Thanks to Eijiro's few seconds of bravery, Fatgum has absorbed Rappa's accumulated blows, which have in return given him great strength, and delivers a powerful punch that smashes both villains. Surprisingly, Rappa manages to survive Fatgum's powerful punch and is standing. But in a twist of events, Rappa tells Fatgum that there are first aid supplies in a nearby room and tells him to treat Eijiro's wounds while referring to him as a man. Rappa has taken a personal interest in Eijiro and Fatgum, which is why he's helping them out. Rappa tells them to use the first aid supplies so that next time, he can battle them again with their lives on the line. Neither Eijiro nor Fatgum can continue participating in the rescue operation due to their injuries, which ends in success thanks to Izuku, who defeats Overhaul and rescues Eri. Later on, Eijiro is seen being carried to the hospital after the mission was completed. Remedial Course Arc. After recovering, Eijiro, Izuku, Ochako, and Tsuyu return to Heights Alliance. When they finally arrive, the entirety of Class 1A greet them, glad that they're alright, checking to make sure they're doing okay, physically and mentally after their mission. Hanta slings his arm around Eijiro's neck while berating him about wearing them. Eijiro apologizes for that, but they couldn't say anything because they were under a gag order. Then Mina Ashido asks Eijiro about his state of mind, causing Eijiro to reply that he still has a long way to go. Mina accepts Eijiro's thoughts. With the beginning of October, Izuku, Ochako, Eijiro, and Tsuyu were given permission to go to Sir Night Eye's funeral, along with the Big Three, All Might, and Aizawa. Due to what happened, it was decided that the Hero Work Studies program was to be postponed for the time being. UA School Festival Arc. Days later, Aizawa informs Class 1A that UA is having a school festival. Eijiro asks him if it's really okay to be so carefree at those times with the proliferation of villains. Aizawa tells him it's a good point, but explains that the festival is sponsored by the other departments, such as the General Department. However, Aizawa points out that part of the festival will be within UA and tells Class 1A to pick out a program to perform at the festival. Since Class 1A also participates, students decide what to do for the festival. Eijiro suggests an arm wrestling tournament, but since his classmates also suggest other things, they fail to reach an agreement. Because he has extra classes with the other interns, Eijiro can't participate in the deliberations, although they say they'll agree with what their classmates decide. After discussing it, the entire Class 1A decides that their school festival program will be a live performance and dance with party space. The next day, Class 1A continues to discuss how their performance will be and what roles each will occupy. Since he has extra classes along with Izuku, Ochako, and Tsuyu, Eijiro arrives later in the bedroom after completing all his classes, joining the discussion. Looking for a singer for their band, Eijiro tries out for the position, but it turns out that he can't get the right genre. In the end, it's decided that Kyoka will be the singer. And so, at 1 a.m., everything's set. Class 1A students are divided into 3 groups: band team, dance team, and staging team. Eijiro is part of the latter. During the following weeks, the various teams practice their respective functions. Mina asks Izuku to switch over to the staging team from the dancing team to help maneuver Yuga during his part of the presentation. Eijiro joins in begging Izuku since there's a part of the play that he needs to take care of, and they say Izuku was selected since he and Yuga have been getting along. After Izuku accepts the change in position, Eijiro thanks him for agreeing. On the appointed day, the performance of Class 1A ends up being a huge success. Pro Hero Arc. As November comes to a close, at UA in the lounge, Aizawa reveals that Eri will be looked after by UA. As Eijiro welcomes Eri, Aizawa states that the decision for UA to look after her is because she doesn't have anyone who can take care of her, and he's the only one who can prevent her quirk from going out of control again. Mirio will also be helping Eri and welcomes Class 1A to visit her once in a while since they'll all be busy. Then, Aizawa tells Izuku, Eijiro, Ochako, and Tsuyu to return to their dormitories as they'll have visitors, revealing themselves to be the Pussycats, who came to celebrate Ragdoll's reinstatement. Eijiro assumes that the Pussycats have returned so that they can rank higher in the Japanese hero billboard chart, to which Ragdoll refutes and replies that they've returned due to their high approval ratings, meaning that there are fans who want to see them back in action. Eijiro then cries some tears of joy. At the UA dorms, Eijiro and his classmates watched a television report of a Nomu attack in the city and were horrified as it showed Endeavor being overwhelmed by the Nomu's attack. A worried Eijiro looks to Shoto, who walks in to watch the scene of his injured father. After Endeavor defeats the high-end Nomu and stands up victorious, Shoto collapses to his knees, relieved his father is still alive. Eijiro is one of the classmates who approaches him to console him. My Hero Academia, Heroes Rising. During fall, the Hero Public Safety Commission devises the Hero Work Recommendation Project to help train the new generations of heroes due to All Might's retirement. Weeks go by, and shortly after winter begins, after the hero interview training, Class 1A is sent to Nabu Island, a remote place in southern Japan. The pro-heroes who protected the island are about to retire, so the students will take care of the place, performing duties as real heroes, acting like their own hero office until the arrival of new pro-heroes. Because Nabu Island is quite isolated from the rest of the country, and therefore far from any villain activity, there hasn't been any notable incident in the last 30 years. For this reason, their work on the island basically involves mostly minor deeds. Eijiro is in the office when Ochako calls across the room and asks if anyone can help her find a lost kid. Eijiro offers to go, but Katsuki says to him that his quirk is not effective to search for lost people, something that Eijiro can't deny. Kyoka and Izuku volunteer to help Ochako in her request. Later, Eijiro is helping move cargo on a truck with the owner of the truck, his wife, and baby thanking him. He does his hardening pose and gestures, no problem, but the hardening disrupts the sleeping baby, and turns out the baby's about to cry. Eijiro tries to calm him the best he can. At night, after working all day, all Class 1A students mention that despite their only doing minor deeds, this kind of hero work is still pretty hard, even though they're not fighting anyone. When Minoru accuses Katsuki of having done nothing all day, he replies that this kind of work is boring and prefers to be in the office in case a villain attacks. Eijiro looks at Katsuki and tells him, quite frankly, there's no villains here. Then the grateful island citizens bring a bunch of food for the kids as a token of appreciation for their help. After dinner, Denki, Hanta, and several other students come and tell Eijiro to join them in the onsen bath and assign Katsuki to be on night patrol. He complains, but Eijiro reminds him that he didn't do any hero work all day long. Katsuki can't argue with that and goes out to patrol the grounds. The next day, while Eijiro and several Class 1A students wait in the office waiting for a request, a neighbor and Fumikage arrive to report that the island is being attacked by a group of villains. Tenya quickly organizes the class to face this crisis. He splits the class into groups in order to deal with the separate threats. Katsuki, Eijiro, and Denki will go to the shopping district and intercept the villains, with Momo, Kyoko, and Mina assisting with medical evacuation. Once they arrive, they save Yuga, Minoru, and Toru from the villain Mummy. While Eijiro, Katsuki, and Denki face Mummy's puppets, Mina, Kyoka, and Momo bring the others to safety as well as direct citizens to the safe hold. During the battle, the villain's able to wrap Katsuki up and turn him into a mummified puppet and uses him to attack Eijiro and Denki. He proves too much for Denki and Eijiro, but Katsuki is able to free himself and defeat the villain. Eijiro and Denki congratulate Katsuki on his victory. Momo and Kyoko arrive to inform them that they've already evacuated all the citizens of the area. Katsuki tells the others to continue the evacuations as he heads off to find more villains. However, Katsuki is defeated along with Izuku by the leader of the gang, 9, who had to withdraw due to his illness. At night, the students retreat to a factory to heal their wounds and provide first aid to the inhabitants of the island. Eijiro helps to distribute food among the refugees along with several of his classmates. Later, Class 1A has a meeting where they discover that the objective of the villain leader 9 is to steal the cell activation quirk from a boy named Katsuma. With this information, they devise a plan to approach them in front and keep civilians safe. The plan is to lure the villains to the furthest corner of the island where ancient castle ruins are. The next morning, 9 and his crew arrive at the entrance to the island. When the students see the villains approaching, they put their plan into action. Yuga and Momo start attacking them from afar with their respective quirks at full power. While 9 blocks the attack with his airwall quirk, his allies break away from the blast. Chimera runs, dodging the cannon shots, but a shot explodes near him and launches him off a cliff, though he lands unscathed near a waterfall. Here, Tenya, Shoto, Eijiro, and Tsuyu ambush him. Along with Tenya, Eijiro attacks with a series of kicks and punches, but Chimera blocks all his attacks easily until his body feels kind of funny. The students reveal that Tsuyu has covered their arms and legs with a special toxic mucus that she had secreted with her frog quirk, effectively stopping his body from moving. Chimera uses his quirk to transform himself, becoming bigger and more powerful and nullifying the toxin, and starts attacking the 4 students. Pinned by Chimera, Shoto devises a plan. They need their companions to distract the villain and help him get closer to him so that he can use his ice powers to full potential to freeze Chimera. All of them agree to put the plan into action. While Tenya distracts Chimera, Shoto holds Eijiro by the waist as he speeds them forward towards Chimera while sliding on his ice. Chimera notices them and blasts at them with his burning beam, but Eijiro activates his super move, Red Riot Unbreakable, to take the full frontal hit from the blast and manages to stand his ground long enough until Chimera finally exhausts his flaming breath. Eijiro loses consciousness, giving Shoto the opportunity to strike. With the help of Tenya and Tsuyu, Shoto manages to freeze the villain before everyone passes out. While they're unconscious after the battle, Izuku and Katsuki manage to defeat 9, saving the island and its inhabitants in the process. After Class 1A emerged victorious over the threat, the military and a large number of heroes arrive at Nabu Island, rescuing the civilians and medically treating Class 1A. The villains are arrested, and for the next 2 weeks, Class 1A continues to stay on Nabu Island to help repair the damage done by 9 and his villains until the Public Safety Commission suspends the program and orders them to be sent home. With the island being repaired by the military and the heroes, Class 1A boards a ferry to return to the UA High School. Endeavor Agency Arc. Mount Lady's invited to UA to give Class 1A hero interview training lessons. One by one, the students participate in a simulated interview, and when it's turn, he shows his quirk, ensuring that he'll use it to protect all those behind him. Mount Lady congratulates him. When it's Izuku's turn to be interviewed, he gets so nervous that his body turns all stiff and edgy. Eijiro mistakes this for the former being able to use hardening just like him. On the night of Christmas Eve at Heights Alliance, Eijiro celebrates Christmas with his classmates. With work studies about to start, Eijiro believes Izuku will return to the Night Eye Agency now that Centipeter has taken over the agency, but Izuku clarifies that he's already talked with him, but told them that it won't be possible because they have too much paperwork. Then, Eijiro asks Katsuki if he's heading back to Best Jeanist, to which he replies that he still doesn't know. Eijiro reminds him that he still has many hero agencies to choose from to do his work studies, but Katsuki refuses to go to any of them. A few minutes later, Aizawa brings Eri to the Heights Alliance to enjoy Christmas with Class 1A. Eijiro asks his teacher if Mirio is coming, but he replies that he's celebrating Christmas with his classmates. Everyone celebrates Christmas and has fun, holding a surprise gift exchange. The work studies start again, and Eijiro returns with Tamaki to the Fat Gum Agency, and now Tetsu joins them. Paranormal Liberation War Arc. Winter break ends and students return from their work studies to show their progress with their quirks and skills. In the boys' changing room, Eijiro praises Izuku for controlling his other quirk, to which Izuku tells him that he can only handle it for a moment and that it doesn't have many uses, but he considers it strong. Annoyed, Katsuki sticks his mask into Izuku's head, surprising and pissing off Eijiro and other classmates who complain about his attitude. At Ground Alpha, under the supervision of All Might, the students battle villain bots to show off their new skills and super moves they've developed. Mina is one of the first to show her progress, showing her new super move, Acid Man. When her demonstration ends, she bounces over to Eijiro, revealing that she was inspired by his Red Riot Unbreakable to create her Acid Man. Eijiro's pretty flattered that he and his move were her inspiration. Also, side note, when Horikoshi was developing Eijiro, his prototype version was actually infatuated by Mina, so it's kind of funny that he's slowly hinting at it for this version. Anyway, afterwards, it's Eijiro's turn to show his progress under the tutelage of Fat Gum. Later at night, he helps his classmates to organize a work-study brainstorm hot pot party to energize everyone for the new term. The months go by until it's late March. The Hero Public Safety Commission had uncovered the plans of Tomura Shigaraki and his organization, the Paranormal Liberation Front. They organize a large force of heroes to take the villain organization down. While a team of heroes raid the Jaku General Hospital, where the Nomu are created, another team does the same at Gunga Mountain Villa, the front's main headquarters. Eijiro is a member of the Villa backup team, along with some of his classmates and Class 1B students. Their mission is to provide support to the heroes who raid the Gunga Mountain Villa and prevent villains from escaping. After Tomura Shigaraki wakes up and commands Gigantomachia to go to him, heroes try and fail to stop the walking calamity. Earphone Jack's surprised and detects the giant, and warns her teammates. Likewise, Midnight contacts Momo saying that they must put Gigantomachia to sleep with an anesthetic, before losing contact. Following Midnight's instructions, the UA students prepare a trap for Gigantomachia by softening the ground with Juzo's quirk, and strategically positioning several ropes covered in Minoru's orbs. Momo creates several 30-liter vials filled with sedative, and will have to be administered orally because of Gigantomachia's tough-looking body. Each student receives the same amount of sedative, so if one person chucks it into his mouth, he should fall asleep. As they set up a trap, they're informed that the members of the League of Villains are riding on Gigantomachia's back. Gigantomachia falls into the softened ground and the ropes stick to his jaw, which are pulled by several students to open his mouth while multiple students charge to throw the sedative into his mouth, but Gigantomachia blows them all away in one breath. Dabi also burns the area, making it harder for students to get through to them. However, Mina manages to get through the flames using Acid Man and prepares to deliver the sedative. She manages to get through the flames and tries to throw the sedative, but upon recognizing Gigantomachia as the monster she faced in middle school, she stiffens up and loses her grip on her canister. She's about to be crushed by Gigantomachia's hand, but Eijiro runs through the flames and pushes her out of the way, apparently having him being the one who ends up smashed. Tetsu arrives to help Mina, who's worried about Eijiro, but Tetsu reassures her about it, telling her to trust in her friend's ability. Eijiro not only avoided being crushed, but also, in his unbreakable form, he climbs his way up the giant's arm, forcing handholds with his hardened fingers. He announces his name and how he won't let there be bloodshed. Before he can chuck his canister, however, it's destroyed by a knife thrown by Himiko Toga. However, Red Riot manages to grab Pinky's canister and successfully chucks it into the giant's mouth. Seeing him, Gigantomachia is about to smash him with a slap, but the students start firing at him with cannons created by Momo, while Lizardly flies in and grabs Red Riot out. Several heroes led by Majestic arrive to take charge of Gigantomachia now that he's ingested the sedative, because the more he moves, the faster it'll spread. Gigantomachia, however, takes on an armored appearance and easily defeats the heroes, and continues on his way to Tomura. Before being defeated, Majestic uses his quirk to bring the UA students to safety, who can only watch helplessly as the giant devastates everything in his path. Later, they tell Mirio about the sedative, as he was going to the same place as Gigantomachia. As the battle against Tomura continues, and the sedative finally works, Mirio and his teammates come to rescue, aid, and assist the wounded heroes. To his tragedy and that of his classmates, when they go to aid Midnight, they discover she was killed. What? Midnight's dead? Oh my god, okay. Eijiro can't help crying over the death of his teacher. Oh my god, what a way to end this. Alright, did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.